It's that time of year, folks. Happy Thanksgiving's Day. Thanksgiving is a magical time of year, blah, blah, blah. It's thanks and family and love. But most importantly, it's a giant meal that has wildly different components that you're making for a huge group of people that will be sorely disappointed if literally one thing is wrong. So today on this very special Thanksgiving episode of Botched by Babish, I'm going to run down the top 10 Thanksgiving ups. I'm going to show you how to fix them if you can, most importantly, how to avoid them. Let's get going. This episode is sponsored by my favorite butter, Danish Creamery. Danish Creamery's exceptional butterfat and creamy, rich texture is what makes it such a valuable ingredient in the kitchen. Danish Creamery European-style butter makes every butter-forward dish the star of the show. I used it in today's episode to level up my turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, and pie crust. For more info on Danish Creamery, head to the link in the description. All right, it's Thanksgiving Day. It's 2 o'clock. I told them we'd eat at 4. I have 10 hungry people in the living room and 12 more on the way. Time to get this bird in the oven. Damn it! So what's the lesson here? Timing is everything when it comes to Thanksgiving dinner. You have so many different elements to make, and they all have to be cooked at different temperatures, prepared in different ways, presented in different servingware. Not only do you need to get this guy defrosting several days before the big T-Day, 24 hours for every 6 to 8 pounds. So make sure that you're taking this guy out of the deep freeze and putting him in the fridge according to that timetable. I'm the least organized, least situationally aware person in the world. But I still make an hour-by-hour schedule of how I'm going to be making Thanksgiving dinner, because if you lose track of literally anything, it throws a wrench in the works. Build out a schedule of everything you're going to be making, when you're going to be making it, what it needs, where, when, why. And you need to try to get done as much as you possibly can the day before. Things that can be done ahead of time. Dry brine or wet brine this bird. Stuffing. Any kind of casseroles you can pre-assemble so you can just throw them in the oven the day of. Stock. Stock goes in 2 things: gravy, stuffing, maybe other stuff if you're weird like that. Pie. Don't make a pie the day of. What are you, crazy? Assemble that stuff the night before, wrap it in plastic wrap, put it in the fridge. You want to make sure that your turkey is fully defrosted the day before Thanksgiving so that you can brine it and or spatchcock it. More on that later. Make a timetable of what is going in the oven when, so that you are not caught with your pants down at any point in this process, because that's not very food safe, honestly. And so it's family around. What are you doing? There's kids everywhere. The door doesn't have a lock. You're not wearing underpants. All right, turkey's defrosted, ready to go in the oven, right? Just like this, no problem. This is what my grandparents did. No, I feel like a dare officer right now. Whether you do it wet or you do it dry, you're gonna wanna brine, okay? You always wanna brine this guy. Once it's fully defrosted, it's time to brine. Wet brine, you're making a 5% salt solution and you're dunking the whole turkey in it. The thing with wet brined turkeys is that they take on a lot of water. So naturally, they don't taste as turkey-y. Dry brine, which I think is a superior method because you get crispier skin and the meat is more sort of turkey flavored juicy instead of wet water juicy. So dry brining helps the turkey retain water instead of adding to it. So the end result is you taste more like turkey. If you're opting for a dry brine, this is also an excellent opportunity to improve your turkey experience massively with this one weird trick: shoving a whole lot of butter underneath the skin of your turkey. It's not that weird, actually. In fact, it's a very popular technique. If we're gonna shove butter in there, why don't we make compound butter? What is compound butter? It's butter with stuff in it. Danish Creamery isn't just the sponsor of today's episode. They're an excellent butter for this application because they have 85% butterfat. That means there's less other stuff, usually mostly water, that needs to evaporate and get the hell out of there before the butterfat can do its job. Last step before this turkey takes a long, sweet fridge nap, and that is to dry brine. And that is the act of putting a pretty generous layer of salt on the outside. In the past, I've positively packed this thing with salt. then you gotta scrape off all that salt. You could rinse it, but then you're introducing moisture into the situation, which you don't really want. So I prefer now to hit it with the amount of salt that I would want it to have. I'm gonna press it on there, make sure it's good and adhered. Hit the underside generously. This turkey has been spatchcocked, butter stuffed, and dry brined. This guy's headed into the fridge at least overnight. You wanna give this guy hopefully 24 hours. If you only have like 4 hours, that's better than nothing. But hopefully you're doing 24 overnight, uncovered in the fridge. This is gonna help the skin dry out, desiccate, and crisp up better. See you tomorrow. All right, our turkey has rested the night in the fridge uncovered, dry brining, so now the skin is nice and dry. See that? Got nice and tight, a little dull, less shiny, means it's good and dry. And now, what I like to do is to roast it on a bed of mirepoix, because they are going to steam and release delicious fumes into the bottom of our bird, perfuming it from below, not unlike a squirt of perfume right up your butt. And there's gonna be drippings from the turkey, and if we just let it drip onto a naked pad, it's going to burn. So, put this bed of mirepoix down here, steams the turkey and catches the drippings and keeps them nice and safe in the bottom of the pan. I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of oil to help aid in the browning process. Now, making sure that the extremities are well over the pan so that we don't get errant drippings. This guy's headed into the oven thighs first so that they get hit with more heat faster. Stuffing and gravy, two of my very favorite things. So it's probably not important what I make them out of, right? Wrong. Boxed stock is pretty gross. It barely tastes like what it's supposed to taste like. It's usually made with byproducts. And if you don't believe me, do this. I would call it a memory of turkey, a suggestion of cat urine, and just a punch in the mouth of salt. And it's really important to use high quality stock in your Thanksgiving dinner. Gravy is just thickened stock. Gravy's one of the best parts of Thanksgiving, and if it tastes like this, you're just drinking this thick. There's nothing terribly wrong with using boxed stock, but what can we do to make it better? Well, that's where my old friend comes in. This guy. From this turkey, because I spatchcocked it earlier, my cup runneth over with pieces of turkey flavor. So I'm gonna use these along with some basic aromatics, either to fortify my existing boxed stock or to just make it from scratch if you have the time. So the first thing we wanna do with these bones is hack them up. Ooh, little something went in my mouth. Just a little something. It's a good thing turkeys don't have salmonella. So I'm tossing these pieces into a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for anywhere from 15, 20 minutes. Okay, got some real nice color on our bone pieces. I'm gonna grab these, put them into the pot with the usual stock suspects. 1 whole onion, quartered, a bunch of celery, carrots, whole head of garlic, a couple of bay leaves, about a tablespoon of whole peppercorns, parsley, rosemary, thyme. And with that, our box stock is gonna be made a whole lot better. Let's cover that with a little water. I'm adding water for 2 reasons. 1, to make sure that everybody is submerged, and 2, because this boxed stock was quite salty. So if we reduce it by a lot, it's gonna be really salty. So don't be afraid to top it up with water. And I'll tell you what would really be a mistake, letting all this fond go to waste. This stuff is just flavor. I'm going to cover it with boiling water, scrape up that good stuff and pour it into my pot. And simmer this for at least an hour, up to like 4. If you, for some reason, didn't end up with a neck or spine, even if you just simmer your stock in these aromatics, it's gonna make it a lot better. So either way, do what I'm doing, not as I'm, and what I'm saying. Do both. Calling this a mistake is debatable. All right, this is really a matter of preference. I know some people prefer canned jellied cranberry sauce. Kendall's one of them. Kendall, tell us why.
I like the texture, I like the flavor. I like how it doesn't taste like cranberries. I like how sweet it is. I like it how it feels in my mouth.
You already said texture, you didn't have to do that. Personally, the first time I tried cranberry sauce made from fresh cranberries with spices and sugars and stuff of my choosing, well, I felt like a real American that day, and that's what Thanksgiving is really all about. So with all that in mind, don't abandon your canned cranberry sauce in favor of this necessarily. If you prefer this, go for it. If not, here's how to make a fresh cranberry sauce from fresh or frozen cranberries. To make homemade cranberry sauce, all you need are 12 ounces of fresh or frozen cranberries with however much sugar this is. Wait, that looks like salt. That was the salt. I'll be right back. Make sure you taste the sugar before you add it to make sure it's not salt. That's the big tip. So, to this 12 ounces of fresh or frozen cranberries, we're adding 1 cup of what I sincerely hope is sugar. 'Tis the juice and peel of 1 orange, 1 stick of cinnamon, and about 2 inches of ginger. We're bringing this up to a simmer, getting those berries burst, and then we're cooking for 15 to 20 minutes until your desired consistency has been achieved. So as you can see, the cranberries have burst and cooked down into a jammy cranberry sauce. It's a little bit thick for my liking, so I'm gonna add a little splash of water. I got 2 secret ingredients for an amazing cranberry sauce. A little splash of vanilla extract and a whole lot of extra sugar. Just eyeballing this piece. Also, I'm using brown sugar. I figured molasses will be a nice flavor to have and hold. A little bit of salt, a lot less than earlier. I'm gonna take out the hunks of ginger, the orange peel, and the cinnamon stick. This stuff you can keep in an airtight container in the fridge for up to 5 days. Take it out, let it come to room temp before serving. I had to turn off the stove. Well, it's the big day. Thanksgiving, today, now. And I need to make pie right now. So I'm gonna get my ice cold butter. I'm gonna chop it up into pieces. Flour, butter, salt. Let's add some water. We have a dough that's just come together here and commence to kneading. Keep things cold, let it rest. These are all just words designed to make me feel a certain kind of way. And my therapist told me that only I am responsible for the way I feel, nobody else. So what's my takeaway? You don't have to do any of that stuff. Here we go. Pie crust is shaped. Don't need to put it in the fridge. Again, that's just an idea. Pie weights are in. It's good to go. I'm blind bake, and then I'm gonna have a pie before I even know it. All right, pie is done par baking. Let's see what we got here. Oh, geez. Honey, I shrunk the pie crust. Why'd this happen? To me, a good person. Doesn't matter if you're a good person or not. I mean, it does, but not in terms of pie crust. What matters is keeping everything cold and letting it rest as many times as possible. Let's see how to do things right. This pie dough was made in advance, fridged overnight. Plenty of flour, nice cold crust. And I'm gonna, because it's cold and I don't want it to crack too much, I'm trying to put some divots in it. Roll this guy out and you can see the pieces of butter in there. That means we're gonna get a really nice flaky crust, but it also means we have more potential for shrinkage, which is why you gotta keep everything cold and rested. Now that we got this nice cold pie dough in here, we're not gonna press it down into the pie pan. We're gonna lift and drop. We don't wanna stretch the dough whatsoever. So now we have our pastry all trimmed and shaped. Now, instead of going into the oven, this goes straight back into the fridge. It needs to be cold and relaxed, like a polar bear. Don't follow me. Don't follow me. All right, it's been in the fridge for a solid hour at this point. You wanna do at least 20 minutes, but the longer the better, really. First thing I'm gonna do, now that it's fresh out of the fridge, is dock it. This is the act of placing lots and lots and lots and lots of little bitty fork marks all over the pie crust. The holes prevent there from being large bubbles. You can, of course, crimp the edges. It's not really doing anything but making things look a little bit nicer. It also helps it from shrinking, so it's not optional. Do it
or die.
Now it looks like it came out of a box. This time we're putting our crinkled parchment paper in there, and we're not half-assing it with the beans. Fill that guy up all the way to the rim with beans. This is going to prevent shrinking, misshaping, and it's gonna keep the bottom of the pie nice and flat. Now we're gonna blind bake that until it's nice and crisp and starting to puff, and then we can fill it with our desired filling and bake it the rest of the way. It's been an amount of time. Let's see what we're working with. As you can see, significantly, I took a corner out of here, just ignore that. Significantly less shrinkage as opposed to this one, which sunk down in several places so far that it could hardly hold a filling of any kind. So yeah, do all that stuff that I said and this will happen. So there's no one way to screw up potatoes, and we didn't want to focus on just one mistake you could make. We want to try to focus on as many as possible. So I'm going to start preparing my mashed potatoes, and every time I do something wrong, Kendall is going to strike me with the problem cabbage. Let's get started. Okay, so first things first, got peeled potatoes. These potatoes are pretty dirty, but I'm peeling them, right? Skin's coming off, so it doesn't matter.
Is that enough of a sentence?
Yes, it was. Ladies and gentlemen, I was acting this entire time. I knew what I was doing wrong. You might think you don't need to scrub your potatoes if you're peeling them, but here's the deal. As you peel them, your hands are gonna get wet. Then as you grab the next potato that's dirty, that dirt is gonna stick to your hands, and then it's gonna end up on the potato. And you're gonna end up having grit in your potatoes. It's gonna go into the water with the potatoes. So even if you're peeling them, you gotta scrub them first. All right, potatoes are peeled, ready to cut into chunks. Doesn't really matter what size chunks, you just gotta sort of cut some chunks. They can be any size, doesn't matter. Again, I've fooled you. You want to try to have chunks of potatoes that are relatively the same size so that they cook at relatively the same rate. When cubing your potatoes, I try to shoot for like, ½ inch to an inch. Okay, potatoes are peeled and chopped, water's boiling, it means it's time to cook. Oh, damn it. I dropped some in for real. No, this did not go according to plan. Another carefully orchestrated skit. You don't put potatoes straight into boiling water because you want them to cook evenly. If you put them in boiling water, the outside is gonna start cooking and it's gonna work its way towards the center. And then you're gonna end up with overcooked outside, undercooked inside. If you start it in cold water and bring it all up to a boil together, it's all gonna come up at the same temperature at the same time, and they're gonna cook nice and evenly. So let's do that. We have our peeled and chopped potatoes headed into some nice cold water. That means now we can head over to the stovetop. Here we go. To get the ideal texture in your mashed potatoes, especially if you're using russets, you want to rinse off the excess starch. You can do that by putting the potatoes in water for at least 15 minutes, ideally like 4 hours. Put them in the fridge, let them sit, then drain them, rinse them, and you're gonna get rid of a lot of that excess starch. That starch is a binder, it's a thickener, which means that you're gonna have thicker, denser, gluier potatoes if you leave it in there. You're gonna have lighter, fluffier mashed potatoes if it goes away. So, I'm gonna let this sit for at least 15 minutes, drain and rinse, cover it again with cold water, then we're gonna head over to the stovetop. All right, got my potato here. I'm gonna test it for doneness. Yeah, it's mostly soft. I don't think anything's gonna happen wrong with that. I'm gonna step away from the boiling water. Oh no, I made a mistake. You gotta make sure that they're fully cooked all the way through. Now I wanna show you guys a little tip I learned from the mysterious old man on the beach. And that old man's name was America's Test Kitchen. He told me that when you're making mashed potatoes, you throw the cooked potatoes back in the pan, turn the heat on medium-low. Then we're going to gently stir the potatoes around, which is gonna help drive off a little bit more excess moisture. The less water you got in these potatoes, the better they're gonna be texture and flavor-wise. So you can see after it's just been like a minute and these potatoes are looking a little fluffier right now. They're not as like thick and dense. It's because we cooked off a little bit of extra water. As soon as they start sticking to the bottom of the pot, that's when you can stop. Okay, cream and butter, nice and hot. So I'm gonna add that in there. All there is left to do now is beat the living hell out of these potatoes. Here we go. Damn it. Particularly with russets, you don't want to overwork them. Even if you rinsed off the starch, there's still a lot of starch in these potatoes. And if you overwork them, if you beat the hell out of them, you're going to create these strands of starch, almost like gluten, that start to form in the potatoes. At best, they're gonna end up gluey and thick and kind of gross in that way. If you wanna keep your potatoes nice and fluffy, I recommend just simply mashing. Stuffing. To me, it's not just a food, it's an instruction. That's what you're supposed to do with stuffing, is stuff it. You put it in the turkey, you stuff it in there, that's why it's called stuffing. Come on, give me a break. Throw the cabbage already. Problem cabbage. Generally, putting the stuffing in the bird, not a good idea. You have to cook the stuffing to 155, 165 degrees Fahrenheit so that it's food safe. And by the time you've done that, the whole rest of the bird is way overcooked. So by the time it gets up to temperature, everything else is gonna be dry as a bone. Instead, just put it all in a casserole, bake that, and if you really want to get those turkey drippings, once the turkey's done roasting, just pour them over top. It's gonna be the same thing. You could have fooled me. Well, folks, if you've watched even one video on this channel, you know what I always say. There's nothing in this world like homemade gravy. And I got my homemade gravy right here. Oh no. It's too thin. It's so very, very thin. And well, it tastes okay because we used our homemade stock, but it's kind of boring. So what do? So there's plenty of things you can do to amp up boring gravy. For flavor, you can add soy sauce, you can add Marmite, you can add anchovy paste. As for thickness, well, this is an opportunity to both add flavor and
thickness.
We all know you thicken gravy with a roux. Tell me something I don't know, head. But this roux is no ordinary roux. I'm going to make a dark roux. It's a deeply flavored, dark, caramelized, brown butter roux that is both going to re-thicken our too thin gravy and it's gonna add color and depth. 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of butter per 1 cup of stock. That's gonna give you a really great starting consistency for gravy. This isn't just if your gravy's too thin. If you're starting to make your gravy, you can do this with your original roux. I don't wanna be confusing. We are gonna push our roux to its very limits and see how dark and caramelized we can make it without burning the butter. The light brown flecks in there and the roux itself is a deep, rich peanut butterian brown. Carefully, slowly, I'm going to add, this might still look a little thin, but we're gonna bring it up to a simmer and it's gonna thicken a little bit more right to the perfect gravy consistency. Let's give our gravy a taste. It's delicious. Needs a couple things, salt and umami, both of which are gonna be provided with some dark soy sauce. I'm also gonna add a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce. Look at that, it's like caramel. It literally looks like caramel, that's fantastic. Oh, no salt needed. Oh, Jesus. We also wanna hit it with some freshly ground black pepper. Now, this guy is ready to be refrigerated until the big day, or just keep it warm until you're ready to serve. Okay, let's take a look. Oh my goodness. I'm pleased as punched. I'm hungry, they're hungry, let's dig in. You know, the cabbage is right. This has to sit for at least 20 minutes. The muscle fibers are completely contracted from cooking and they need to relax. If we cut into them now, they're gonna push out all the juices and you're gonna end up with a pool of juices instead of on your plate, instead of in here. All right, it's been 20 minutes. The turkey is properly rested. Time to carve. Ooh, woohoo, woohoo. It's because this guy positively mangles the meat and you're gonna lose a lot of juice. Let's see how to carve that Thanksgiving bird. Now, to start off, to make things a little easier, I'm just gonna bisect it like so. Oh boy, oh my God. Oh, it's all the butter. I was like, it's bleeding. It's okay, we're not trying to retain butter, just moisture. All right, I'm gonna separate the light and dark meat, and it's especially easy to do on a spatchcock bird. You got the breast right here. We're just gonna cut between the breast and the thigh and drum. Simple as that. What we have to do to carve the breast, I'm gonna cut right around this joint here. We're gonna cut underneath the breast, right along the bottom, and remove it simply and easily. And off it comes. There we go. Now, this can simply be sliced into slices. And the skin, still crisp. I'm gonna separate the drum and the thigh by cutting right down here through to the joint. Separate the drum. We'll shred the dark meat. That's a good idea, right? Everybody loves shredded dark meat. There we go. That's half the turkey carved. So now all there is to do is assemble our Thanksgiving spread. Wow. And there you have it. Thanksgiving pulled off without a hitch. I hope that you learned something today. I know I did. And I hope that this video helps steer you right this coming holiday, because I know it can be a really stressful time. So pay particular attention to that first tip, timing, and the rest should hopefully fall into place. I hope you have a happy, happy holiday, and I hope everything turns out as delicious as this stuff looks and actually is. Thanks again to Danish Creamery for sponsoring this episode. Danish Creamery is an award-winning European-style butter. It's truly a blend of Danish heritage and American innovation. Since 1895, Danish Creamery has been inspired by century-old methods, resulting in fresh, quality butter made in America. This butter is extra churned with 85% butterfat, giving it a richer taste and texture, and becoming your secret weapon in the kitchen. For more info on Danish Creamery, head to the link in the description.